Actually, probably have to okay it. Good.
Okay.
Awesome. All right. Thanks everybody for tuning into this episode of Addicts Living Free. I got Dag from Manitoba online here. You want to give a shout out to anybody before we get started?
Everybody who's a part of my life, and everybody who's fighting to stay clean, for sure.
Awesome.
Yeah. Nobody in specific, just everybody.
Cool. Well, I hope you guys enjoy this episode. Dag's got a great message here and you're about to hear it. I'll give you a fun fact, unique fact about Dag. If you've ever driven from Manitoba to Saskatchewan, you'll see the wind turbines on the side of the road there. He's got this fear, or just this vision that every time if the blade's facing straight vertical, it's going to come crashing down onto the highway, hit the highway. So just a fun fact for that. So the way, hopefully never happens, right? Hopefully.
Right.
Yeah.
I make that trip lots.
Awesome. So the way I get every episode started off is what's one thing you're grateful for today and why?
Every day, actually, I'm grateful for good health, sobriety, and life, because not too long ago, I didn't have those things. So every day I'm grateful for those things. And, when I do my gratitude prayer in the morning, then I generally kind of include those things, and then everything else I'm grateful for each day.
Yeah. What a game changer that is too, doing that.
Absolutely.
Morning,
Absolutely. Yeah. I'm a big gratitude preacher.
Yeah. Well, it's an action word too, right? So,
yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Sweet. You want to kind of maybe start us off with what your childhood was like growing up?
Yeah, sure. I grew up in a musical home. My whole family was musically inclined. Lots of fellowship that music brings in my home. But with that came a lot of alcoholism. Everybody was up drinking all night and playing music and having a good time. But I really liked the energy in the air. So being like, I thought it was normal to be 7 years old and sitting on your mom's lap at 1 o'clock in the morning while everybody's drinking and playing music and having a good time. Apparently I was supposed to be sleeping. But that was kind of my childhood, was growing up around musicians and growing up around a lot of people who just wanted to have a lot of fun. Unfortunately, I always made the association with music and alcohol, and it kind of sucked in later years, because that's what I learned, but even then, like being out with my friends all the time, I was barely ever home, because back then you could go out from morning time and come home when the sun comes down. That's when it was home time, right? There was no cell phones. Things were a lot safer out there, and yeah. So
how old are you, if you don't mind me asking?
41.
41. Yeah, so we're the same age, same generation, and I'm 40.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I totally understand that. When they kick you out and then come home when the street lights come on.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, listen for your mom yelling for you.
Yeah,
that was the other one.
Yeah,
that's cool. Were you an only child, or did you have siblings?
No, I have siblings. I have an older brother my oldest brother is just my mom's. My older brother and sister next to him are my mom and my dad's, and then I have two younger siblings that's just my dad's.
You got a big family.
Yeah.
Was it ever challenging, like the blended family at all, or did you feel any difference in there?
No, because we were all family. Like, it was just they're my brothers and sisters. In our home, we only grew up with the three of us, though. Like, my oldest brother grew up with my grandma, and then so me and my older brother and older sister, all three of us grew up in the same home. But we shared rooms, we got on each other's nerves, we did sibling things.
Yeah, I get that one.
Yeah.
So how old were you then when you first kind of got introduced to it or tried it on your own, drinking or drugs, whatever?
So to be completely honest, I don't even remember my first. I know at 10 years old, I had self-harmed. I had went home and asked my mom one day why kids were mean, because all my friends would get bullied, including myself. And I remember feeling different because I didn't know how to be mean. Like I was this kid that wanted to love and be loved, and that's it, right? And so when I would see bullies and people picking on people, it hurt me. And so I went home and asked my mom, and my mom just kind of brushed it off and just said, "Oh, it'll be okay." You know, uh, I didn't realize something like that could spiral into something much worse, right? But it at that time, I guess overall, it told me that my feelings don't matter, because that's the most important person in my life. And she's just disregarded my feelings, essentially, right?
Yeah.
So my feelings don't matter. And because of that, I started self-harming. But I know by 12, for sure, I was using alcohol. And because I remember specifically one time when I was 12, when I was drinking, and I remember this sense of empowerment it gave me, a sense to not care, a sense of the ability to be that mean guy or that jerk or whatever, right? It fed my ego too, like it made me feel like I was included with people. So yeah, by 12 for sure, I was drinking. Yeah, and then I think as far as like any drugs went, like I dabbled with weed a bit when I was 15, but it doesn't do good for me. Like I end up having a panic attack, and so it's been written off almost that entire time. So actually, I hated drugs until I was 27. I never touched any drugs. I hated people who did drugs. I seen what it did to my friends who did drugs, and I didn't want anything to do with them. And if you came into my house with drugs, I was probably going to beat you up or throw you out or something, right? Like, and probably not beat anybody up, but
Yeah.
I was going to be very mad and very aggressive and throw you out of my house. And but at 27, that's when I found my drug of choice and really dove in head first.
What was your drug of choice, if you don't mind
Cocaine.
sharing?
Yeah.
Do you remember that first experience at the age of 27? Or actually, let me start with this one here. Like between that period of, I don't know, say 12 and 27, before you get introduced to the hard drugs, did alcohol ever affect your life, or did you have any problems with alcohol?
Lots. So by 15, I was drinking every weekend, and by 18, I was a high school dropout and drinking as much as I possibly could, usually every other night or every third night. After a while, drinking wasn't numbing any pain anymore. I would get drunk and, cry all the time and get drunk, and the emotions are trying to come out, right? I get it now, but at the time I didn't. And so when I did cocaine for the first time, I was actually really drunk, and a friend of mine had said, "Here, try this. This will straighten you out a little." So leading up to that, though, the reason I did it was because my brother was in the music scene, and he always expressed about how accessible drugs are in the music scene, and how he didn't want to see me fall into that because he had fallen into that. And he had said certain things to me that only, as an addict, only part of it stuck with me. Mm-hmm. Right. So he'd say stuff like, don't ever do cocaine because you'll spend thousands and thousands of dollars on it, because it's the best drug you'll ever do, and you'll constantly search for that first high. Mm-hmm. But all I took from that is cocaine's the best drug you'll ever do. Right?
Funny how that works, eh?
Yeah. So I'm just like, oh, I better not do that because it's the best drug I'll ever do. And then, but so when I did it that first time, it was always in the back of my mind. And when I did it that first time, it was like, well, if this is the best drug I'm going to do, and then I'm going to do it. And I really don't remember a lot from that night. I remember being super worried about what was going to happen. And I remember not being want to be left alone. And I remember getting really, really hot and like, you know, and then I woke up in the morning. That's really all I remember. And so then I got mad at myself for 2 weeks and like emotionally abused myself. Yeah. What are you doing drugs? Like you're a fucking idiot. You hate drugs and blah, blah, blah. And, you know, and I said a lot of really hurtful things to myself. And then I started to think to myself, well, if cocaine's the best drug I'll ever do, why don't I remember it? Maybe I need to try it again. And that the silly reasoning I had with myself, and I had turned and looked at, I was managing a beer store at a time, giving an alcoholic a beer store to run. And I looked at one of my employees and I said, he was also a friend of mine outside of there, but I had said to him, you ever done coke? And he said, yeah, once. And I said, you want to do it again? And he said, sure. And I said, okay, I'll call up some buddies. And within half an hour, I had some. But as soon as it was in my hand, any idea of an experiment to find out why it was the best drug I'll ever do went out the window.
Yeah.
And it was instantly, this is who I am now. This is what I do. And I hid it for quite a while because I believe that like people would have been upset with me because I was a hypocrite and blah, blah, blah. So I figured I had to hide it. But anytime anybody asked, I didn't hide it. But I would either beat around the bush and avoid answering the question, or I would, you know, or I would come straight out and say it. Well, but I never came straight out and said it otherwise.
Well, and I'm sure you kind of fought with that after too. Like I know that hypocriteness, if that's even a real word,
yeah.
hypocriteness, just fighting that internal struggle of like saying one thing and all of a sudden like falling into that hole of it. And then like, you still have to make, like, you still try to save face or wanting to like keep this image of being against it. And I can just imagine the internal struggle.
For sure. Yeah. For
that, right.
Especially after 12 years of hating it, right? Like 12 years of being strongly against it. And, you know, I lost a lot of friends because I lost a lot of respect. I was already very little respected because I was an alcoholic, but I lost a lot more. A lot of people lost a lot more people lost respect for me after that, because some of the closest people to me walked out of my life and I really didn't care.
Yeah. It's funny how, well, it's not funny. It's crazy the powerful of the drugness, right? Like when you just don't care and what it does for you yourself, right? So
absolutely. Yeah.
So from that beer store time, you know, your experimental time, how did that kind of go after that? How you said you were 27 when that happened, right?
Yeah.
So how did things kind of progress?
It went I started hanging around with that one person all the time because that was mine and his thing now. You know, after work every night, I would go to his house and I would buy a couple of grams and him and I would play, you know, golf all night on PlayStation. And just that's what we would do until I had to work in the morning. I worked in the morning, he worked in the evenings. So he would get sleep and I didn't. And, you know, and we did that for quite a while. Probably, well, I say quite a while, but it was probably only a couple of months. And I started to get frustrated with him because his dependency really shot through the roof. And I was, at that time, I was just kind of like, who cares? Like, let's just fucking do it. When we're out, you know? Yeah. But I really wanted to do it all the time. And don't get me wrong, there was times where I was like power dialing my dealers at fucking 4 o'clock in the morning because I ran out.
Yeah.
But after a while, I started thinking, why don't I just pick up more? You know, and then I started hiding it on him so that, you know, he wasn't doing it all and complaining and trying to ration it all throughout the night. And I just wanted to use, you know, who cares? And so then I found another group of people who I could use with. And it just so happened my cousin was a dealer, so I started hanging out with him some more. And he was like my best friend growing up too. Like, we learned how to drink together, we learned how to smoke together, we learned how to do everything. We skipped school together all the time, right? But he started getting in trouble with the law, and I kind of stepped away from that. And but then we reunited when we found that common goal again, right? And so from there it just kind of spiraled worse. I became I destroyed the band I was in. Stopped caring about music, stopped caring about, I lost my job at the beer store. I was working at a tattoo shop as a shopkeeper and piercer, which is great because it gave me the freedom to, like it gave me the freedom to do something cool, but it didn't pay a lot.
Yeah.
And so the only way I was going to make more money is to become a drug dealer. And I did that for maybe a little over a year and a half. Ended up quitting my job at the tattoo shop and working as a cook again. I was a chef for 18 years. And I became a cook. Like, I wasn't a chef for 18 years yet, but like overall I've been a chef for 18 years. And I started cooking again, but it was just kind of part-time work just to more account for my money. And then and on the side dealing drugs. And I had a perfect plan because my cousin would do all his drugs and he would offer me all of his drugs, and we would sell both of our drugs, and I was never out of money because I would end up lending him money so he could get more, so he could reload, and he would pay me back twice as much.
That's a good,
right?
Good, good
Yeah.
loan, right? Like that.
Yeah.
That's a lot of interest, right?
Yeah. So, I mean, it was great. I had a great plan, and the only problem really was that, the constantly looking over your shoulder and constantly paranoid. I got out of it because of my paranoia, and I'm glad, because 2 days after I got out of it, he got raided.
That's perfect. I feel pretty fortunate, like in my story, like we moved a lot of drugs into I lived in a little town, like 5,000 people. And when I got sober, and I don't feel guilty today, but I recognize like the damage that I brought onto the town, right? That I used to live in. Like, it became an epidemic, the drugs. And I got out of it just in time. Maybe 6 months after I got clean is when all of a sudden the raids started happening and all the crackdowns. And like, I dodged that bullet, and I don't carry that guilt today, but like I see, the impact that I had. And I'd be in jail today for a long time, if it wasn't for getting clean, so
Absolutely.
my blessings on that one.
Yeah. I don't think I would do good in jail.
Cheers to that one.
Yeah. I always say that, like, if I was still out there, if I was still alive, I would probably be on meth and be a part of this meth epidemic. But if I wasn't, if I was still out there and not alive, or whatever, however you want to word that, I guess, I either would have pissed off a drug dealer, a very, very, tough drug dealer, or I would have overdosed, or I would have died in jail.
Yeah. Well, that's what they say. That's the end of it, right? Jails, institutions, and death, right? That's the three outcomes of living in that lifestyle.
Yeah.
What was life looking like for you when you first realized you had a problem? Or where things needed to change? Like, what did life look like?
It's so funny because like, throughout the years, I would have a bad night and then I'd be like, oh, I got to get clean. But I would always convince myself I got to get clean for a little bit so I can come back in and be good again. Right. And it wasn't until I went on this medication. It was actually my oldest son's 17th birthday, or 17th. It was my oldest son's I don't know, it was one of his birthdays anyway. I can't remember offhand. And it was also Father's Day. And I hadn't talked to him since he was 2. Well, I had talked to him, but he never knew it was me. He never knew it was his dad. He knew it was just some guy. And he was too small to know any different, right? Like I would phone and I'd be like, "How was your day?" And he, "Oh, good. I did this in school and blah, blah, blah," like in preschool and stuff like that. And then he'd be like, "Hey, I'm going to go, bye." And, like run away from the phone.
Yeah.
And that was kind of my relationship with him. His mom moved to Victoria when he was like 3 or 4. And so it was a phone conversation. When he was 6, I had to make a choice to walk away because she would pull him in and out of my life all the time. And so when his father fell on Father's Day, or when his birthday fell on Father's Day, it spiraled 21-day long bender of drinking and using and working and drinking and using and working. And, there's some showers in there, and, and the only sober time I saw was at the end of my work shift when I was calling up a drug dealer to go plan my next party with them. I had 5 drug dealers on the go throughout that 3 weeks. I was calling. If I could call the same one a few days in a row, I would, but usually they'd be like, "Man, you need to fucking go to bed." And I'm like, "I'm just getting started. Fuck you. I'll phone the next one then," and I still didn't see the unmanageability. I still didn't see it as a problem. I was still just having fun. Yeah. When I was a teenager, I had bad acne and I went on tetracycline, and it created tooth problems, like enamel problems. So my enamels were really worn out, and I was having, as good of hygiene as I could do with my teeth for drinking and using all the time. I was doing as good as I could, but it still created like tooth infections and stuff. And I'd gotten this jaw infection, and I put it off so long that they put me on this really strong, I don't remember what it was, but it was this really strong, like a really strong whatever. And they had said to me, like, you can't drink on this, because I went there drunk to go do something about this infection. And they had said, "You can't drink when you take these, right?" And I said, "Well, whatever, it's not a big deal. I just won't drink then, and I won't use or whatever." And they're like, "No, like there's been cases of people who have like murdered people on this. So like, it's very important you take this seriously." And I said, "Okay, well, how long is the prescription?" And they said 7 days. And I said, "Well, I could go a week without drinking, no problem." And looking back now, I haven't done that since I was 14 or 15, probably 15, because I got grounded for 3 months when I was 15. And yeah. And that was the last time I got grounded.
That's funny.
But yeah, that was probably the last time I went more than a week without having any sort of substance in my body. And so I went to this concert. My plan was I was going to go out and use the next couple of nights and then go to this concert. And then after that, I was going to start this medication, because I didn't want to go to this concert sober. Fuck that. That's dumb. And, so I went to the concert and ended up using, and somehow I drove my little brother's mom's car back to Portage from Winnipeg, which is about 45 minutes. And at least a quarter of that was construction. And I don't remember any of it. And I didn't have a license. He just didn't want to drive. And I said, "Well, I'll drive. Give me the keys." And so we went to my cousin's house, and I remember sitting there, and I took a line, and I remember sitting back, and I just closed my eyes for a second, and my body had finally stopped. Like it shut down and just said, "No, you're going to sleep now." Yeah. And so I slept for a few hours, and I got up and I did this walk of shame home, And I took my first pill, and then, kind of sweated it out throughout the day. Didn't really feel too great. Normal hangover feelings of anxiety and depression and whatever else. And then the next day it was worse. And I was getting 3-day hangovers by that time, if I allowed myself to get to the third day. It was worse, but the hangover feeling wasn't that bad. It was the anxiety was really bad. And then the thoughts started pouring in. And, and like I said, I was a chef at that time. And on the third day, I started visioning myself cutting myself. And that kind of scared me because I work with knives, and sharp knives at that. My knives have to be sharp. And so on the third day, I had phoned mental health and got a voicemail. And I was very upset because I wanted to kill myself. That's what I wanted. I wanted to kill myself, but I didn't want to because I wanted to live. But my head was telling me to kill myself. And so I phoned mental health and got a voicemail, and nobody phoned me back, and I wanted answers right now. And, so I waited till about 5:00, and I phoned them again and got voicemail again. And I just said, look, somebody needs to phone me. I'm not okay. And I never heard back. And then the next morning I phoned again, and I said, somebody needs to phone me now. Like I want to hurt myself, and I don't know why. And I'm terrified. And I waited an hour and nobody phoned me back. So I said, fuck this, I'm going to the hospital. And I went to the hospital and checked myself in. And I talked to everybody I talked to, the receptionist, and then the triage, and then the nurses and the doctors and everybody else. And it was the same thing. Anytime I opened my mouth, it's bawling my eyes out and saying, and because I was always taught, like, a doctor can't help you unless you tell them everything.
Yeah.
Right. So I was very vocal. I just came off drugs for 21 days and blah, 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 and I said, no, I just want to kill myself, and I don't know why. And I need help. And so for 5 hours, these doctors and nurses are coming in and out of this room asking how I'm feeling. I'm going, what do you mean, how am I feeling? I want to kill myself. Like, somebody fucking help me. And so at one point, getting close to the end of that 5 hours, at one point I thought, maybe if I quit drinking, I'll quit using drugs. And if I quit drinking, maybe I'll pay my bills. If I quit drinking, maybe I'll quit mistreating women. If I quit drinking, maybe I'll be able to hold a secure job. If I quit drinking, maybe I'll be able to get my own place, pay my bills. Maybe I'll get a phone that isn't a pay-as-you-go phone. Not a drug dealer anymore. I don't need that. Maybe I'll be able to have a relationship with my kids. Maybe I'll be able to have a relationship with my family, with my friends, the people who actually care. And as I'm thinking this weight's just like lifting off my shoulders. And so this doctor comes in and he said, how you feeling? And it was the first time I opened my mouth and didn't cry. And I said, I need help with my addictions. And he said, well, I can help you with that right now. So he got me all this paperwork. I still had to wait for mental health to come, but he got me all this paperwork. And that's when I realized that my life was unmanageable as a result of my addictions.
Do you have any idea where that thought came from? Or
Nope.
like
Nope.
It just kind of...
It spiraled from sitting in that hospital room saying, how did I get here? Yeah. How come I want to kill myself? Like, my life's good. People like me. So I thought, I'm a musician, but I wasn't active because I destroyed every band I was in as a result of my addictions, and I wasn't a very nice person, but I thought I was a nice person because I thought I was still this little boy that wanted to love and be loved. Yeah. But I wasn't. I was this monster, and I started thinking, how did I get here? Like, how did I get to this point where I want to fucking kill myself? Like, okay, I have $75,000 of crippling fucking debt that's hanging over my head, that I can't just seem to pay my fucking bills. Yeah. I'm 32 years old, living in my mom's computer room. What kind of rock star is that, So it was just kind of like more of wondering how I had gotten to that point where I wanted to commit suicide. When in fact, I did really, really, really cherish my life.
Yeah. You just
Why
had a
these
moment
thoughts
of
were
clarity.
coming.
You just almost had like that moment of clarity, eh?
Yeah, 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 absolutely.
Where it
Yeah.
all came together. How'd the doctors help you? Wait, is that your clean date today? I'll just ask you that one quick.
Uh,
Clean date today.
yeah, July 8th, 2013.
Yeah. Oh, so you're 8 years, coming up on 8 years,
9 years.
9 years.
I just took 9 years. Yeah.
Congratulations.
Thank
That's
you.
awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So from that doctor place, how did they help you? And is that your clean date today? Like from that
Yeah.
point? Or
Yeah. Yeah.
so let's take me through that, like how they helped you.
They gave me some phone numbers of people I could actually call. They gave me some pamphlets and whatever else, and they kind of I guess they must have known that I was going to take it seriously. I mean, because you can tell, right?
Mhm.
For the most part, you can tell. There's times where, you know, that cunning, baffling powerfulness is very manipulative, right? But
Mhm.
I didn't go in there because I wanted to get clean. I went in there because I wanted to kill myself. And then I had this sudden change around. And so they gave me all these pamphlets and they explained to me how important it was I read these pamphlets. And when I left there, when they allowed me to leave, then I read through them. I went back to work and I talked to my boss. My boss at the time, the only reason I had a job was because him and I used to drink in the cooler together. And when he'd leave, he'd let me run the restaurant and I would order up drugs and whatever else, right? And I'd be doing drugs while I'm cleaning up. And, you know, so it was just kind of like, I had to go in and tell him, like, I can't have this anymore. I can't have this drinking around me anymore. I need to take this seriously because this is how I feel. And he said, absolutely. I don't think he ever drank in that cooler ever again.
Okay.
Yeah, so that was the one good thing. He became quite the asshole, but you know, he really respected that, and I have a lot of respect for that, for him for that, but only that. I do have some resentments I have to work through. But yeah. So I phoned, like here we have AFM here in Manitoba. We have AFM, which is Addictions Foundation Manitoba. And I phoned them, and the counselor had gotten her voicemail right away, and I just got mad. I was just like, why is nobody helping me? You know, like, why is it everywhere I phone, I get voicemail? So I hung up, and then I phoned back right away after I calmed down. And in the neighboring office was like a family addictions counselor. And it was also my high school addictions counselor.
Oh, wow.
And he had answered and he remembered me. And he said, you know, she's on holidays for 2 weeks. She'll get back to you for sure. Like, she's really good about that. She'll get back to you as soon as she's back. And we can go from there. In the meantime, can I suggest you go to meetings? And he gave me a list of the meeting times, and that was kind of what I did to hold me over. You know, like I went, well, I kind of hummed and hawed about meetings for a few days, but I knew I had to try it at very least, because nothing else I did worked.
Yeah.
So
yeah. What was your first meeting experience like?
Amazing. I walked in that room and there was like, it was intimidating. I say it's amazing now because I've been clean for some time. At that time, I went with my brother, who at the time had a day more clean than me. But that was kind of our thing, was we were going to go to meetings together. And so he took me to my first meeting, and I walked in and there was probably 22 people in that meeting. And that's big for Portage la Prairie. Like, I've been to an Edmonton meeting. I know that those meetings are freaking huge.
Nothing
but
like Vancouver though, or New West.
Yeah.
They're huge there.
Yeah, I've heard. Yeah. And so but for us, like a meeting of 22 people is pretty big. And there was 22 people there and only 2 chairs left open. If that's not a sign. And then 3 of those people in that room I recognized, but I didn't know they were in recovery. One, his clean date was the day before I was born, and he played music with my stepdad. So I just assumed that he drank. The other one played music with my stepdad, and he was kind of wild and crazy and, you know, like really bubbly and very open guy. I just assumed he drank. And the other one was an old drinking buddy of mine who I hadn't seen in a few years, and I thought he just got shacked up and couldn't come out and play anymore. Turns out he went to jail and didn't want to come out and play anymore. So that kind of made me feel a little bit more welcome. Those 2 chairs that were open were right next to the guys that played with my stepdad, though.
That's cool.
And so, and every single person around that table that talked shared my story through their own lives, right? And to me, that was just like, how do you know me? How do you know this stuff? Like, you don't even know me, you know? And just being completely blown away that I was finally in a room of somebody who gets it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I totally relate with that one. I came in when I was 21 and, you know, had to learn. One of the greatest things I did right away was learn to identify, and getting honest with myself was, you know, I hadn't lost everything because I didn't have the family yet or the house yet. But
Yeah.
had I had that stuff, I know for sure I would have fucking lost it, right? So,
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
you know, like
Yeah.
kudos for.
I had lost my fiance. Again, I was living in my mom's computer room. I couldn't even couch surf on drug addicts' couches anymore.
That's where my bottom took me to. That's what
Yeah.
I was doing. I wasn't, next step was home, like I was homeless,
Yeah.
but I was still couch surfing. Like I had a bicycle, a backpack, and a jacket with 6 pockets, and where I
Yeah.
laid my head was home. You know,
Yeah.
so the next step was on the street after I used up those couches.
Yeah. Absolutely.
What what was like in that first meeting you went to? You said, you know, everybody was sharing your story. Do you remember like what resonated the most to you, or if something stood out, you know, that made you keep coming back?
I really don't know. Like that again, that was such a long time ago. And walking in that room terrified and not knowing what to expect, and okay, I should probably own up to something that I'm not scared to own up to. I've owned up to it lots. In When I was a drug dealer, we actually lived, our backyard, you could see the club room from our backyard very well. Like it was like, if I would have walked out of our yard, I would have almost been in the club room
Okay.
grounds. Yeah. So we used to deal drugs and drink in our backyard, and look at these sorry fuckers who had to go to meetings because they couldn't drink. Turns out they can quite well, and that's why they're in those meetings.
Such a shift in perspective, eh? Like,
Yeah. So that was kind of like I had to humble up and go and become one of these people. So, but to listen to them say that their life was unmanageable. You know, I heard stories about people who had ended up homeless and were happy homeless.
mhm.
They were fine with picking out of the trash cans and because they were drinking. You know, they as long as they had their fix, they didn't care. They
Yeah.
lost their families, they lost everything. I heard stories about people who lost their relationships with their kids. That was me. People who fell into the music scene. That was me. People who got disrespected. That was me. You know, each person had their own story, but all I took from it was the parts that were about me, because, you know, I'm selfish that way.
Well, it obviously worked and it helped. So
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
so
So
what was your first year like then? Like let's go through that first year, maybe some of the challenges that you had to overcome, you know, maybe triggers. Or actually, let me ask you this one. How did you have to deal with people from your, I want to call it your past life, right? Like how did you have to set boundaries and stay on the path you were, but separate yourself from your past or your other kind of lifestyle?
The very first thing I did was make a post on Facebook. And I said, I realize my life has gotten out of control, and I realize that I've done some things that aren't honorable or aren't respectable. I've done some very shitty things to people, and I'm aware of them. They don't need to be pointed out. But this is where I need help from people. And either you're with me or you're not. I'm going to turn off my Facebook, but keep my messenger on. And I don't know when I'm coming back to Facebook, but if anybody needs to reach me, you know how. And if you don't want to reach out to me, if you aren't going to be supportive of my decision to want to save my life here, then you can fuck off. You know, and I had to be that blunt, because now it's about me. I spent so much time making it about everybody else. Like, it was like somebody be like, oh, my wife's going to kick me out because I'm partying too much. Really? Have a beer and talk about it. You know, like, that was my advice. Have a beer. Let's talk about it. You know, or let's go get some drugs and talk about it, you know. And like, how does that make any sense?
Yeah. That's one of the things looking back, right?
Yeah. And so now it was about me. Now I needed the help, and I needed people who I could rely on, not people who are going to take my shit and throw it back in my face, not people who are going to talk about my shit behind my back or to my face, you know, not people who are going to make me feel guilty for the things I already do feel guilty for. I needed people who just wanted to support me. And the majority of them were in that room.
Yeah.
I tried to hold on to some of those old associates. They weeded themselves out.
Yeah.
I didn't even have to let them go. Some of them I did. And actually, it was really funny because my mom always used to say to me, these drug dealers, they aren't your friends. I said, no, they're my friends. They're my friends. And they're drug dealers. They're not your friends. Out of my 5 drug dealers, 4 of them all said to me, don't come around here. I want to see you do good. Which really made me wonder what they thought when I was sitting at their table.
This guy's got to go to bed.
Yeah. Like, holy, this guy's a mess.
Yeah,
You shouldn't be selling to him.
When I get that bad, I might have a problem, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. So
who's one of your biggest supports when you first got clean, and how'd they help you?
My sponsor. He didn't give up to me, called me out on all my shit. I was a horrible sponsee. I would never phone him. I went to meetings. He would phone me every month and he would say, oh, good, you're alive. And I'd say, yeah. And he'd say, I'm just checking in. I haven't heard from you in a while. And I'm just like, yeah, I'm still alive, still going to meetings. And because like, by that point, I'd started going to NA meetings and he was an AA sponsor. And I'd say, okay, well, I'd rather hear from you than about you, just so you know. And that was his thing. And I actually want to get that tattooed on me, is I'd rather hear from you than about you. And I use that quite often now. I lost him 3 years ago. He passed away.
That was too bad.
Yeah. And 2 years ago, actually. And so I've got some things I got to work on to let go of that and just get a new damn sponsor already. There's other ways I'm compensating in my recovery, but I know that's not going to be.
Yeah.
Like I know I need a sponsor. So
yeah, it makes a difference. It helps,
yeah.
Like it helps.
So the first year, like he helped me a lot, you know, calling me out on my shit. You know, anytime I was letting my addict speak for me, he would say, nope. You know, or we had when we opened up our NA group, we had a 10:30 a.m. meeting, and he said, I'll see you at 10:30. That's too early for a meeting. And he'd say, what time are you in line at the beer store? And I'm just like, oh, yeah, I'll be there. And he's like, yes, you will. You know, and it was good. He really coached me into prioritizing what was important to me, you know, and making sure I knew that my higher power previous to this was a drug. You know, and I gave everything to that higher power. Why can I not give, even if my higher power is a meeting, why can I not give my everything to that meeting? Why can I not even give a quarter of everything to that meeting?
Yeah. Yeah. Then how hard was it to kind of like, I don't know, put your ego aside and, get uncomfortable? Like,
Took me 4.5 years.
yeah.
First 4.5 years in the program were very, very chaotic for me. I was still misusing women. I was still doing the best I was still sober. I don't think I was quite clean yet, like clean here. But I was still sober, and it was just, my life was still fairly unmanageable. I'd got my own place. I had actually opened up a restaurant by that point. I was struggling with keeping a relationship. I was struggling with maintaining friendships. I was losing my relationship that I just rebuilt with my kids. That restaurant actually became my whole life. And for about 6 months before I ended up in a stabilization unit. And I remember being upset because my business partner wouldn't come watch the restaurant while I had to go to a meeting, because I knew I had to go to a meeting because I could hear my sponsor's voice in my head. But I wasn't going because I wanted to. I wasn't going because I knew the importance of it. I was going because that's just the commitment I fucking made. Yeah. And so I would go and I would be bitter. I would be opening it and I'd show up 5 minutes before and not make coffee and not have the lights on and not get books out or anything. And it was a brand new meeting. It takes time to get people in those doors, and sometimes you're going to have empty meetings. Mm-hmm. And so I remember there was, every single time I would walk to a meeting, because I didn't have a license or a vehicle yet, every single time I'd walk to a meeting and I'd be grumbling to myself that if nobody shows up today, then I'm going to shut this down. That's it. I'm done. And those were the days that somebody poked their head in and said, is this NA? I'm looking for NA. This is my first meeting, or whatever, right? And it gave me enough hope to last a little bit longer. Got to talk about me for an hour, if anything.
I heard something like, I started a meeting too, and we kept it open for 2 years, and it really never grew because it was the first of its kind here in Canada, and we just didn't have the support. But for about 2 years, we'd sit there, or even another fellowship I stayed, help keep the doors open, and we would just sit there and nobody would come. And somebody once said it kept you clean for the day though, or it kept you clean for an hour. And when you dumb it down, like, you're right.
Absolutely. Yeah. And so I look at those times now as, those people didn't come to meetings because they needed a meeting. They came to meetings because I needed a meeting. Right. And my sponsor would always say to me that your higher power is going to bring people into your life at the most random times. And you're going to hear what you need to hear as you need to hear it. And I remember my first time I did a guest speak, and I was so nervous, and he was there, and he just said, I said, well, do I like prepare for it, or do I, like, what do I do? And he's like, you sit down, you open your mouth, and whatever spills out, just like you do at the meetings.
Yeah.
He's like, you're just having a single person meeting. You're just telling people this story about what happened, what it's like, what it was like, and what it's like now.
Yeah.
And I said, okay, well, these are kind of the points I want to touch on. He said, no, don't prepare for it. Just tell it like it is. Just tell it as it comes. And I said, okay. So I sat down. The meeting came, and I sat down, and I shared my story, and I rambled on about this and that and this and that and this and that. Nothing that I wanted to talk about. And I was mad. That none of this stuff came to my head while it was sharing. And my sponsor said, that's an amazing story. I didn't know that story. And I said, well, it's not the story I wanted to tell. And he's like, nobody needed to hear the story you wanted to tell. They needed to hear that story that you just told. And he's right. I had 4 people that I'd never met before come up to me and tell me that they needed that.
That's awesome.
So
That's awesome.
just stuff like that. It kept me humbled, right? Like it's because it's all about me.
I want to ask you something. You said 4.5 years there was turmoil. What was your turning point? What changed?
When I ended up in a stabilization unit from overworking and whatever else, I ended up suicidal again. I was clearly on my way to a relapse. My restaurant was down the hall from a bar. And although I'd like to say that, no, I never would have drank, I can look back now and see I was on my way to a relapse. All the behaviors were there. But anyway, I ended up in the stabilization unit, and it fast tracked me for a mental health, community mental health worker. And she was phenomenal. Best community mental health worker, well, best therapist I've ever had, best counselor I've ever had, because she too didn't let me get away with my manipulative ways. And she would call me out on my shit. But every meeting for the first little bit, she would say, tell me about your recovery. I said, what do you want to know? And she'd say, well, you told me you started an NA group. I said, yeah. And she said, and you help out addicts? Yeah. Okay. And you live by the way of the program? I said, it was to the best of my ability. And she said, you keep in contact with your sponsor? I said, only when he calls me. And I was very honest with her. And she's like, so you do all this stuff for your recovery. Have you done steps yet? And I said, no. And she said, why not? And I said, because I don't need to do steps. And she's like, clearly you don't need to do steps. You're sitting in my chair. And so after a while, she started sneaking in step work in our sessions. Smooth. Not formally, but yeah. I went to a meeting after a session, and I was just like, oh my God, I had this spiritual awakening today. And then it just flashed right before me every single time she snuck step work into our sessions, right? And I never felt better after that. Like I felt amazing, and I was really revitalized. Of course, chaos didn't end there, but what the chaos ended there, but it still snuck its way back in. A few short years later, I dated an alcoholic. And because I thought the same thing I feel about society is the world's not going to stop turning because I'm a junkie. Yeah. The world's not going to stop turning because I can't handle my booze or whatever, right? And that's okay if people want to drink. I don't need to date an alcoholic. Like that's a bit extreme. And so she neglected me for 2 months straight. We dated for a little over a year, and she neglected me for 2 months straight. To this day, I still don't know why. I mean, I do, but it was because I found out from somebody else. Yeah. That she had relapsed on drugs and just didn't want to tell me. And so when I finally worked up the courage to leave this woman, when I finally said enough's enough, I can't do this anymore, because I started getting thoughts of maybe if I show up with a case of beer, she'll want to talk to me. That's not healthy. That's not a good decision at all. So I finally had to work up the courage to leave her. And I felt this relief. No more chaos, no more panic. And I said, I'm going to phone my sponsor tomorrow, and I'm going to do step work on this because I know it's going to help. And I was very determined to do step work. Unfortunately, the next morning, his wife had phoned me, and he had passed away. So I mean, like, it took me a little bit to work through that on my own, which I really shouldn't have. But yeah, I know I need to do another set of steps. Yeah, just gotta do it.
Yeah, it's one thing being aware, it's another thing actually doing it. Right?
That's right. Yeah.
Like I have a lot of awareness about a lot of things. I don't necessarily do them all though, right? Like
yeah. Absolutely.
Maybe there are little bits here and there. It's so yeah. I'm gonna ask you this one then. What does a balanced life look like to you today? How'd you find balance?
Last September, I got diagnosed with ADHD. So there's no balance. I've been very strong on not wanting to go on narcotic-based drugs. which pretty much rules out anything for ADHD. I have coping mechanisms that I work to make ADHD work in my life, but there's still no balance. It's all or nothing for me, unfortunately. And I accept that. So I have my recovery, I have my relationship with my kids, I own a company, I'm a healthcare aide, I work at a treatment center. Somewhere in there, I'm supposed to eat and sleep. Like trying to maintain relationships, and
It's a
there's
juggling
no
act.
balance.
Yeah.
I'm aware of it.
I'll be honest with you, like when balance comes up, and the reason why I ask is, I feel like balance is an illusion almost. Like every day that's a different pivot or it's a different spot, and it's always swinging, right? Like there's never at any point can things stand still and you can look back and be like, it's balanced, right? It's always like,
Yeah.
it's just a constant juggling act, right? And trying to do the best you can every day.
Yeah.
This question I like to ask everybody is some mentor. Do you have any mentors in your life or role models, and what area of your life?
Well, there was my sponsor. His program was very attractive to me because he could be that silly guy, he could be that wild guy, he could be, like I said, I thought he fucking drank because he just had that personality about him. But he did drink, but 14 years before I met him. And he learned the secret to life, the secret to serenity, and I remember he would talk about the money problems he had, and he wasn't even mad. Fuck, I want that. I want that.
I'm with you.
And now I'm that way. I found that I'm very, very, very serene today. I've been through quite a bit in my recovery, and it's still not enough to break me. I've been through what I believe to be the second most devastating thing anybody can go through, and that's losing their mom. And that was last month.
Sorry to hear that.
Thank you. And if you ask me what I did last month, it's a blur. And some things are still a blur. I have more clarity now, but I don't want to use. I'm still very aware of my feelings. I'm still very aware of what's going on around me, where I'm going, what I'm doing. I'm still going to as many meetings as I can because I know that's important for me. I'm still keeping in contact with sponsees. I'm still keeping in contact with sober people, avoiding slippery places. Mm-hmm. I'm just trying to live my life again. You know what I mean? I went to a music festival, actually. As I say, I'm trying to avoid slippery places. I went to a music festival in Drumheller for August Long Weekend. And it was a really healing experience for me. The promoter there had lost his mom previously, and he talked about how she believed in something she knew absolutely nothing about and really supported him fully. And that was my mom. My mom really supported me fully in all the endeavors I've done. I put on the Manitoba Loud Music Awards. That was my brainchild. That was my thought. That was my, that I spent 5 years saying this will never happen because I just don't have the balls to do it. And I found a group of people to help me do it. And we made it happen. And it was a huge success. During the fucking pandemic, nonetheless, we had 75% capacity, that we were allowed to have. And that's awesome. And we're doing the second year now. Our nomination period just closed, and my mom really supported everything I did that way. She would buy tickets when I was selling tickets, like physical tickets. She would say, just give me a couple of those. I'm not going, but just give me a couple of them, yeah. And I would sell them to her. And she came and saw my band play one time. And she stood at the back and with earplugs in. And as soon as we were done, she gave me a hug and she said, okay, I've had enough, I'm going, and it was kind of an eye opener for me that I can't stop. I need to keep doing what I'm doing because that's what she would want. That's what my friends want. That's what my family wants. And that's what I want. I want to keep going. And so I'm going to keep doing amazing things. You know, my mom was probably my biggest mentor, even though, so when she said that thing to me when I was a child, I didn't understand why she would do that. When we dug that out in therapy, I didn't understand why she would do that to me. Like, why would my mom do that to me? I fucking praise this woman.
Yeah.
And it turns out it's because she didn't know how to be a mom. She didn't know how to be, she was an alcoholic herself, right? She didn't know how to talk about feelings. That's a time she grew up in where you didn't talk about feelings. It's not her fault.
Yeah.
And so through that, we got a lot closer, you know, and so I don't blame her for any of that stuff. I don't blame anybody. I've let it go because that's just the way it played out.
Yeah.
It's nobody's fault. I'm okay today.
Yeah. You see it for what it really is, right? Like,
Yeah, absolutely.
I've said this a few times on the show before is, one of the greatest gifts I've received in recovery is being able to separate feelings from logic.
Yeah.
And take myself out of that equation to see it for what it is, and not from a personal perspective, right?
Yeah. I was actually just talking about that in a meeting today, being able to not take things personally anymore.
Yeah. And that comes with time. Like that
Yeah.
doesn't happen overnight.
Oh yeah. No, there was a lot
practice.
of frustrating times where I built this analogy in my head where, like, picture this glass wall and the world turning and you're trying to push it this way.
As long as it's
how's
not
that working
flat.
out for you? That's
Yeah.
that's the entire analogy of my addiction.
I can see that. I can picture that.
Yeah.
I want to ask you a couple more questions here.
Sure.
When I say gifts of recovery, what comes to mind?
Life, amazing things I've taken for granted and lost because I took them for granted. Things I'm grateful for today. I have a home. I have a vehicle. When I got my vehicle, there was only 178 kilometers on it. My very first vehicle.
That's cool.
I've got a relationship with all three of my kids. My oldest son came back into my life this year.
That's amazing.
It was July, like I said, this is what I can tell you about July. My birthday was on the 2nd, like my belly birthday was on the 2nd. On the 3rd, my oldest son reached out to me. On the 4th, I was just in a glory. On the 5th, my mom died. On the 8th, I took my 9 years.
Oh wow.
On the 7th, I moved my son here. Moved him here to stay with me. On the 9th, I took my 9 years. Or the 8th, I took my 9 years. And then, it was just like things just fucking worked out. These are gifts of recovery. It wasn't a gift that I lost my mom, but I got my son back at a time where I needed him to come back, I truly believe that my higher power was like, okay, you're going to go through something you really don't want to go through. I'm going to give you something you wanted more than anything over the last 15 years. And my last words to my mom and my last conversation with my mom were, Kai's coming home. And she said, I know Corley told me. Corley's my sister. She said, I know Corley told me. And I was like, Kai's having a baby. And she was like, I know Corley told me. And she smiled so big. She was so happy for me.
That's awesome.
And so to me, that was beautiful. Gifts of recovery. I'm pretty well debt free. I've got a bit of debt, that I've rebuilt, but it's not as bad as it was. It's manageable. Another gift of recovery, my life is manageable.
Probably more peaceful too, eh?
Oh yes. I was at a meeting once and it was a speaker meeting and the guy had said, true serenity isn't finding peace in your life, it's finding manageability in your chaos. Oh shit, that makes sense.
I like those one-liners, there was a period there, like I love one-liners and I love that's keeping it simple and dumbing it down. And I whenever I think of stuff, I always have these little one-liners that pop into my head, and it just makes it easy to relate or puts things into perspective for me, right?
I never realized that I became one of those old timers that uses one of those one-liners. I never realized it until last year. Somebody was just like, "You're an old timer," and I said, "What do you mean?" I said, "You're using all those one-liners." Fuck, I used to hate those things.
Great though, I love them.
Yeah. Oh, I love them now. Yeah.
Yeah.
But like telling me easy does it when I'm want to be chaotic.
Yeah, that's funny. That's funny. Here's one for you. What characteristic? So I'm gonna ask you two more after this, or one more after this. A characteristic of yourself you're most proud of today. Right.
I'm once again that boy that wanted to love and be loved. I'm my heart. I have emotions again. I have an ability to help people and a passion for that. And everything I do in life that is a part of that unbalanced lifestyle isn't for me anymore. Like yeah, it's for me because it keeps me clean,
Mhm.
but it's my way to give back. I'm no longer giving people drugs. I'm giving them the ability to giving them the tools, you know,
Yeah.
here, go get clean.
Yeah. Yeah. It's here. It's here if you want it, right? I
Yeah.
mean,
Yeah.
proof's in the pudding.
Yeah.
You know,
Absolutely. Absolutely.
proof's in the pudding. What do you do? Like, what's something fun that you do in recovery since getting clean, or what are things that get you excited today?
I get to do anything I want.
Good answer.
Anything I learned that anything I want to do, I can do.
Mhm.
Except for safely use drugs and alcohol, but
No loss there, really.
yeah,
Been there,
no,
done that.
that's not something I want to do anyway. So, but anything I want to do, I can, and I've proved that. And every goal I've set, I've met, except for buying a house, which I'm doing. I'm in the process of doing it. Like I went and picked up the paperwork today.
Sweet.
That was my next goal, was to buy a house.
Do you write your goals down, or do you just?
No, I manifest the hell out of them in my head.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Okay, I'm gonna end on this question here. How do you describe freedom from addiction, or how would you describe it?
No more pain, no more suffering, serenity. Love for yourself. The ability to smile and mean it. Knowing everything's going to be okay. Oh, there's so many things I could say about it. Like, it's just freedom from addiction. I didn't think it was possible for so many years. I didn't want it either. So, but there was those times where like I had to go on my dry out periods, and where I think deep down inside I did want it. I wanted that freedom from the chaos, freedom from the unmanageability, freedom from the hell I was living in. But I don't have that today. Today I can wake up and fuck, what am I grateful for? I'm grateful for this and this and this and this and this. So many things I'm grateful for. And then I can go to work. And when I go to work, I walk in those doors and it's not about me. It's about the patients, and then I get to come home and this is mine. This is my office right here, like this is awesome. Everything I do is right in front of me. I'm so happy with how life turned out. And I can accept the fact that life's going to have hard times, but I don't need to use over it. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, that feeling of that to me is freedom.
Yeah. Yeah. I totally agree with you on that. And I loved every bit of what you just said there, shared with us there.
Thank you.
Okay. I'm going to ask you one more then. Yeah, because I see the excitement, right? Once we get into recovery, you can just when we get chatting about recovery, just that excitement, and the heartbeat starts to go up, and
Yeah, absolutely.
you get excited
Absolutely.
about it. You're passionate about it, and
Yeah.
I love it, right? So, how's fellowship helped you, like, in your journey of recovery? How much of a game changer was it?
Well, because of the fellowship of music, I fell into that world. The fellowship of drugs and alcohol and music, I fell into that world. But that fellowship that music brought, that's what was attractive to me. So when I found that fellowship in recovery, that same fellowship, a room full of like-minded people who just wanted to laugh and have a good time, I found that same thing in those meetings, in those rooms. And fellowship, to me, it's easy to open up, and it's easy to it's easy to say. Now that I'm this far in, we were talking about that in a meeting the other day. We were talking about trust, because when I went in there, I didn't even trust myself. How was I going to trust this group of people I didn't even know?
Mhm.
But they proved I could trust them on that first meeting. And fellowship is here. I believe fellowship is here. When you can feel good about being around a group of people, when you can feel good, not like the good you felt when you were around a group of people who all had straws in their fingers, and when you feel good and safe and relaxed and everything's going to be okay, to me, that's the fellowship. And I'm so grateful that I get to experience that every day.
It's funny you should mention that, because I have a Facebook group, right? And the question I asked is one of the fears that you've overcome. And mine was being in a crowd of people that I don't know, or being in a crowd of strangers that I don't know, was one of the fears I had to kind of
Right.
overcome. And groups was one of them, meetings was one of them, and just out in public too, right? I used to have this fear of, like, being surrounded with people that I don't know, because who knows what the fuck's gonna happen. Like, it
Yeah.
just scared the hell
Yeah.
out of me. And today I don't have to look over my shoulder or my back and worry about that.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't think I ever had that problem. I've always been a very social person.
Well, not me.
But at the same time, when I was in active addiction, it was social because I wanted to be included.
I can agree with
Right.
that part. Yeah. I used
Now
to
it's
sell
social
drugs, so
because I just love people.
yeah, that's awesome. Well, and you
Yeah.
help people too, right? In all
Yeah.
different lines of work, right? And
Yeah.
create community too.
Yeah.
So
I spoke at Recovery Day in Winnipeg a couple of years ago, and the Portage Online, it's called, the local website and newspaper, whatever, they did an article on the fact that I spoke at Recovery Day and performed there, and I actually just read it yesterday. Again, I looked back on it, and I don't know how it even came up that I found it, but somehow it came up, and I was just, oh shit, wow. So many great things were said to me too, like in the comments. Like that one guy had posted in one group, and he just said, like, this man worked with my daughter, and I have nothing but respect for him, his struggles, and what he's a great person, and blah blah blah, and my hat's off to you. And then I was reading down the comments, and I clearly read them when they came out, because I reacted to them then. But I was just like, wow, I have so much support.
that's awesome. That's cool.
Yeah.
Um, and I was talking about this with a guest at a different one about getting compliments when it comes to recovery. Like, it's easier to get compliments when it comes to recovery than in normal everyday life, right? Like, it's
For sure. Yeah.
a little
Yeah.
more recognizable.
Yeah. And like, even being a musician, like, I often wondered who's blowing smoke up my ass and who's not. Right.
Yeah.
I know I'm doing a good job. I know that these people recognize how hard this is.
Yeah.
And so when they say good job, I know they mean it.
It's
So
validating what you're doing. Yeah.
yeah.
That's awesome. Looking at the time, I think we're pretty much out of time here.
Okay.
Do you want to promote anything quick? Do you want to mention your band or anything like that? Or
Uh,
Like,
If
it's your
any
choice,
bands
right?
want to come to Manitoba, I have my business. It's called Badlands Promotions Incorporated. Just look it up on Facebook.
Okay.
Yeah, that's really about it. We've dealt with quite a bit of bands from all over the world. We've booked Michael Graves from the Misfits. We booked bands from Paris. We booked bands. We just put on a band from all over Europe, and we put them on out here. You know, like, so we've gained attention all across the world. Australia. But yeah, so anybody who wants to book a show out this way or needs any help with their band, like, we do everything that a band could possibly need. So just reach out to us.
Cool. I'll put that in the show notes too, because you know what I believe, like, you know, what I want to do with this podcast, or even just in general, it's just helping people in recovery or people in life. I don't want to say post 12 steps, but like as a result of getting clean, you know what? I want to help people grow in their everyday life, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
we'll put
Yeah.
that in the
And
show notes. And
I would not be a business owner if it wasn't for my recovery. You
that's
know, even with my restaurant, my therapist helped me understand that, yes, it might not be a part of my life anymore, but what was my goal? To own a restaurant. Well, I did that.
Yeah.
Wasn't meant for me. Okay. Moving on.
I learned skiing's not for me. I'm afraid of heights, going up that chairlift, right?
Yeah.
And I learned that after getting clean.
Yeah. So yeah, it just, if any, like, we're all about helping the artist. You know, we take bare minimum for payment, you know, like just what we have to, more than anything, because it's not, I don't want to break these bands. I want these bands to be able to enjoy themselves.
That's
You
awesome.
know, we have youth initiatives and stuff like that we want to start working on and get the youth playing again. Because to me, that feeling of being at a live show when I was a kid is unlike anything.
Mhm.
And the feeling I got the very first time I played sober, unlike anything.
Yeah, I believe it.
So I want to give that back. And yeah. So
Awesome. Well, thanks for sharing that. I'm going to get you to wrap up the show here. I get you to leave final comments here. What's something you want to leave with the listener? What's something we haven't maybe chat about? Like, your final thoughts.
one question that always comes up when I talk to somebody is, if you could look back on your childhood, and if you could go visit your childhood self, that 10-year-old self that was about to self-harm, what would you tell yourself? And I always say that I would look at that kid and I would say, buckle up, you're in for a ride. You know, and because to me, that saying of would you change anything from the past, it's so cliche, but I really wouldn't. You know, I've learned to work through a lot of the shit I've caused, and it's made me stronger and made me who I am today, and given me the tool to how to help people who do these things. You know, so would I change that? No, absolutely not. Do I feel bad that I've hurt people? Absolutely, but I'm doing my best to work through it every day, you know. So buckle up, you're in for a ride. But you know, there is hope for everybody. I hope that one day everybody finds it, you know, because I knew that I wasn't going to find it until I was ready to, until I saw that unmanageability in my life, because up to that point, it was everybody else's problem, not mine. So I just pray every day that people find their recovery and find that point where they're sick and tired of being sick and tired and they're done with it.
Yeah. That gift of desperation.
Yeah.
100%. So. Awesome. Well, thank you for sharing your truth with us, Dag. I really
Thanks for
appreciate
having
it.
me.
Thanks for sharing your time.
Yeah.
If you guys want to see this too, I'm going to promote this one too. We got the YouTube channel up and going. So I'm getting it caught up. I got a few episodes here to catch up on it. So we're about 25 I've got posted up there, and I got about 5 or 6 more I got to get caught up on. But you can see it face to face if you like. You don't have to listen to just the audio. And I'll leave you guys the same way I leave you every episode, and that's make lots of memories, take lots of pics, and show the world your smile. Cheers. Stop.